Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 18 of Worth 1,000 Words, where I write a 1,000 word short story based on a piece of artwork. And today is a bit of a momentous occasion. Cyberpunk 2077 is releasing this week. If you're watching this on the week of December 7th, which I hope you are. So I thought, why not do something cyberpunk related? I haven't done a story in cyberpunk. I have looked at artwork like that in the past to pull some ideas from, but I never took the dive and did it. But I figured, why not? This is the best time to do it. So I found a piece of artwork that was just released a few days ago, actually. And I love it because the artist says, "I am waiting." He literally created this artwork because of his anticipation for the game, and that's pretty damn cool. So I'm doing my part. I'm piggybacking off of what he did, I guess, but it is a little different, as you will see. It's not the typical running and gunning, crazy tech, action-packed cyberpunk you might expect. Something a little quieter, something a little bit more intimate. I love all the action, but these are the kind of stories that I find interesting, especially in settings like this. I think Blade Runner 2049 did a great job with it. It's not just about the spectacle, but it's about the small moments. And to complement this artwork, I had to find something electronic. I had to find something that really set the tone. And I did Google a lot of cyberpunk soundtracks, but all of them were just too heavy, too high tempo. And as you know, or as you will see, this artwork, it's quiet. And so what I did is I went back to Cliff Martinez. He did a fantastic soundtrack for The Nick, which is a great show if you haven't seen it, with Clive Owen. And it's a turn of the century setting, but the soundtrack is electronic, and I really love that touch. And I commend Steven Soderbergh for taking those kinds of chances, because while it may at first seem kind of off, it really, really works, and I think it bleeds into the background, and it's a great marriage to the visual. So that's what I did here. I was a little bit more literal with it, I think, but he created a great soundtrack that I felt fit the tone. So I suggest you check it out while I read the story to you, or if you read the story on my website. But anyway, I hope what I do does the property justice, because I'm really anticipating it. Anyway, with all that said, let's check out the artwork. Today's artwork is titled 2077, and it's by an artist named Vladimir Manyukin from Moscow, Russia. I told you it was quiet. You can see here we have an older gentleman sitting at a bar, and I think what I saw most about this image is his eyes. They looked off, and so I imagined them to be an augmentation of some kind. But really what's most striking about this is the look on his face. Now, he looks like he's remembering something, or reminiscing about something. And the woman sitting beside him, a hologram. Now, is she actually a hologram, like an artificial intelligence, or is she like a projection of someone at the other end of the line, so to speak? Now, as I said, there's really nothing going on here except two people having a conversation. We have a guy sitting near the back, and there's a bartender, but no action to speak of. And that's really what drew me to this. I think, as I mentioned, and probably multiple times throughout these videos, that these are the moments that are interesting to me in settings like this, because all of the other things are expected. The action sequences, those are expected. This is where the cool stuff happens, because it's where the technology and the world building and all of these things inform the story itself. And as you know, and as I try to preach all the time, character is what counts. And that's what we have here, a couple of characters in conversation. So Vladimir, I thank you for not going the expected route as many artists do. Not that it's a bad thing, but you truly did something that was a little bit different here. And I'm excited to tell the story behind it. So let's see what I came up with. He saw nothing, and he saw everything. The world was filament. The people, the places, the air, everything was infused with. "Good evening, Jack," Mel said. "It is," Jack said. "What brings you here tonight?" She always asked the same question, as if she'd forgotten him. Maybe she had. He wasn't sure what gen she was now. His last upgrade hadn't been quite as good as he'd hoped, and he'd paid steep. "Same old," Jack said. "I don't understand." Jack smiled. "Of course you don't. Jack looked at her but didn't. He didn't have to. Even if he had been able to see her form rendered to the liking of the most base male demographic, he wasn't sure how he would have felt. Her voice steered him in another direction, the path to home. "It's nice out, isn't it?" she said. "The light brings out your best features." "Which are?" "All of them," she said before a giggle hit his odd mod. It was as jagged as the lurid installation above the bar overloading his photosensory og. Meaningless shapes for a meaningless time. "I don't like it when you flirt with me," Jack said. "Can't a girl state her observations anymore?" Jack felt the network tat sizzle from his neck to the back of his hand. "All these things," he said, "they never helped me find you. Now look at me." He held up his hands for her inspection. Was he even human anymore? He had shied away from this world for decades. It had passed him by, and he was glad for it. His line of work demanded it, but thanks to his lucrative career before everyone jacked themselves into inhumanity, he had been able to secure enough funds to lie low, under the radar of this destruction. "I've always been here," Mel said. She hadn't. She used to be in his house, in his bed. "You're not Asian," Jack said. "Your father was of Germanic descent, your mother a second-generation Brazilian, her parents from Italy. You had auburn hair that fell to your waist, one blue eye and one green. There was a cute gap between your front teeth that whistled when you laughed too hard." "I bought you a drink," she said. He waited for her to remember, for the form he could see but couldn't shift into what he knew she was. His eyes, the last thing he had purchased, the one thing they had promised would lead him to her. They didn't let him sleep, so he searched every blip on every network. "God damn it," Jack said, pushing the drink aside with his elbow. He found the position comfortable, so left his arm there. "You know I don't drink." Her waveform was a flat line. "I told you I had the money coming," Jack said. "Why didn't you believe me?" "Oh, you know how to treat a girl," Mel said. "Of course I'll have a drink. Just one. You know how tipsy I get." "You could drink an Irishman under the table," Jack said. "A literal Irishman. Remember that time in Dingle?" The name gets me every time. We laughed for hours after seeing the sign. Knew we had to stop by to see who the Dingletons were. Or was it Dinglers? "Dingleberries." Jack laughed. "There, I said it." He waited for any kind of recognition. Her waveform rolled steadily across his deep vision. "We went to that fuck, I hate the word quaint. That seaside dive that smelled like fish. Well, everything smelled like fish. And that boastful ginger fucker with the red face. When he passed out and shit himself under the table, you were full of about a gallon of Ireland's finest, as sober as the day I met you. Was that a spike in her waveform?" He scanned the layers and all axes. There it was, an anomaly. Small, but there. Fuck, what was he saying again? "Dig, you bastard, dig." You wanted to go for a walk. It was nearly 2 a.m. We were jet-lagged as all hell, destroyed from the drive. You said you wanted to see the ocean, the rocky beaches, skip some stones into the waves. I was cold, and you called me a baby as you skipped down the bluff toward the water. I stumbled down after you, yelling into the wind. When I reached you... Mel took his hand. Her thumb stroked his net tats on the back of his hand, setting them afire. He felt his face crack with a smile he didn't think it capable of. It hurt. "Jackie?" Mel said. His throat constricted to hold back the sob. But he let the tears flow. He needed to feel that again, the only organic thing left of him, he hoped. He knew. They hadn't taken it from him. It didn't exist on the surface. It was amorphous, intangible. "Jackie?" she said again. "I know." I knew you'd remember. I just had to find the man, she said, behind you. Call me Jackie again, he said. Her binary head of electric life shook. The man behind you, Jackie, he's... God damn, I've missed you. He took her face in both hands, and it materialized as something he could see. She looked like she did that evening, backlit by the moon, eyes aglow with a love he would never know again, hair dancing as if it were already underwater. Jackie, she said, putting her hands on his. The man behind you, he's... I know, Jack said. He didn't turn. He knew tonight would be the night she remembered. He had let the scout follow him here. He was tired anyway. Too many enemies in this line of work, even an old dog like him. It was quiet, painless, a slight pressure on his lower back. His vision was the last thing to dim, head floating into oblivion, and Jack saw her, like it was the first time. The first thing that caught my eye was this guy's eyes here in the foreground. They look like they are implants, as I mentioned, and that's why I began this way. He saw nothing and he saw everything. I think I initially thought that he doesn't see the way humans see any longer. And that's what that first line meant. And it little did I know, because I didn't know exactly where I was going quite yet, but it does pay off when we see exactly how that affects his vision and the implications to the story. So, but anyway, as you can see, these two characters having a conversation. That is the entirety of the story, as you know. And I wanted to play back and forth with him, because you know by now, since you've listened to the story, that he came seeking this woman, his wife or his lover or girlfriend, whoever it may be, seems to be trapped in this hologram or this AI. And he's coming back to her again and again and again to try to awaken a memory in her, like so she can be herself. And that's what I'm playing with here, especially with the dialogue. He'll immediately address something as if she should know it, and then she answers with something completely cliche or ordinary, like right here, for instance, when she says, the light brings out your best features, which are all of them. So she's flirting with him like she would any other customer. And I could only assume that either she is an AI or maybe she's a projection of somebody else. I chose AI. Kind of like Blade Runner. That's what really came to mind. And I'm playing here with his modifications. So his photosensory og. I remember I did this with Robo Rats way back when I had to kind of come up with these world building terms to just pepper in the story to make it feel, believable. And I don't know that I care for them that much here. I think they could be a little bit more creative, but I think they did the job, and that's really all that matters. And right here, I'm starting to seed the idea that, Jack says, I don't like it when you flirt with me, meaning he, he'd want his wife to flirt with him, but this isn't his wife, or it's not her mentally. And so that's why there's these nice little pieces of subtext that I tried to work in there. I think with dialogue, it's really important to have people not really say what they mean. It's more like you have to read between the lines to get the true message, and that's a real natural way to reach interesting conflict, I think. And here he admits that he got all these augmentations to hopefully help him find her, and they didn't really. He finally did make it to her, or so he thinks, but none of it really was driven by his augmentations. And there's a little bit of background here, a little bit of exposition, very short paragraph, but I'm kind of establishing him as a hitman of some kind, or some kind of person who, isn't isn't with the law, so to speak. Not an upstanding citizen, and he has the look of, I don't know. He just had this kind of gangster kind of look. He's an older guy, slick back hair, leather jacket. He doesn't feel like he completely fits into this world. It's almost like his augmentations and his elements are just slapped on a normal guy. And I really like to play. I really wanted to play with that idea. Is that these were not his idea. He just said, "I got to fit into this world," and so that's what I did. And right here, he's really trying to hit hard with the recognition. So he's addressing her physical appearance, saying you're not Asian, and he's just throwing these lines at her of her past, and her father was Germanic, her mother was an Italian, second generation Brazilian, and just these very specific character details, like the cute gap in front of her teeth, and so he's just like throwing everything he has as if this is his last chance. And as we can see, as you know from the end of the story that you've already heard, it was. And I like this too because I established that he doesn't drink, and then she begins with, "I bought you a drink," and really that led to her being a great drinker, I guess if that's a term, which you'll see shortly. It's the bit about when they went to Ireland on a trip. But I wanted to establish his posture here, right? So, he pushed the drink aside with his elbow. He found the position comfortable, so he left his arm there. And that's really what I'm painting right here. I'm trying to get the the image or the story to the image. So that's the moment. It's not really the end. It's kind of this, and the way his face looks too. He's coming to some kind of realization, or he's reminiscing about something. And I think that really that's what this whole conversation is about. Is she eventually comes to, and he's remembering all this stuff. Like, you could drink an Irishman under the table. So the drink was a great segue to have him remember a part of their history. And this Dingle story here, or this Dingle town, it is a place in Ireland. I wanted to. I just Googled small town in Ireland, and Dingle popped up, and it sounded odd, and so I thought it would work for a fun little conversation, because it is a pretty damn goofy name. And this adds a little bit of levity to the scene here. He's smiling. Maybe that's even what's happening here, right? Maybe this is the moment of the story that is depicted in the artwork. He's not being approached by the man sitting behind him, but he's recalling something. At least that's the expression I got. And here we just go into further depth here of the descriptions of the town and the events that took place there, and sort of like what. Now, I don't know if this is the last time he saw her, but it's definitely a very powerful moment in his mind. It's something that stayed with him for years and years and years, presumably, because he's an older guy now. He's what, late 50, maybe 50s, late 40s, something like that. So I assume that this was going to happen a long time ago. Not really how she left him. And here he sees like a spike in her waveform. So I imagine that he was visualizing her not as like a photograph or video or anything like that in her true form, but more like data. And so that's what that was. I thought maybe that it gave him more details about her, maybe her vital signs, maybe something about her that would be an anomaly, as I said, that would guide him to know that he was speaking with the woman he's always been looking for. And so he's pushing forward. You can see with the stuttering, he's hit a little bit. Like, oh, was that a blip? Was that something? Was that a shred of recognition? I need to keep going. And so He stumbles a bit because he's excited. I don't know why I went back. I think I was oh, that's right. I was looking at his hand. So he's got like this tattoo or some kind of implant on his hand. I wanted to use that. And right here she takes his hand finally. And this is the moment where she is her. She's the woman, and then I decided to use Jackie because that can't be a nickname that any man would like. So I thought, the people closest to you generally have pet names or weird nicknames, and I thought that would be a good way to really hammer home that that this is the woman he's been looking for, and he's definitely hit emotionally, and he's even thinking, his emotion or his tears are the only organic thing left, and they can't take it away because it's intangible. And here she starts. Now, whether or not his demise that she noticed is what's triggering her, or it was the words, I don't know. I don't know that it matters. Maybe she's finally looking out for him because she knows he's gonna die, or she knows he's gonna die. Or it's the tale. I don't think it. Yeah, I don't really think it matters. I think what's important is that he got what he needed, and he's just kind of just consumed completely with this discovery. And he says, "God damn, I've missed you." And he's remembering the last time he saw her and what she looked like, and even though she doesn't look like her right now, but that doesn't matter to him. And I wasn't sure how I was going to end this. There's two other characters in the scene. They're very background characters, but I thought, well, I've already established this guy as a hitman or some kind of fixer of some kind, that maybe he's putting himself out in the open, and that's a danger to him. Like he's being retired, I guess, or he's pissed off the wrong people, and presumably when you're in his line of work, you've pissed off a lot of people. So running around looking for a woman on the streets is probably not the smartest thing to do. And here I'm just cleaning things up. I went over 1,000, and so, which is good because it really forces me to clean my words up, tighten my sentences, all that stuff, get rid of things that don't matter. And I would always rather write too much than too little. And it's funny because my NaNoWriMo book, I thought I was going to do that. I ended up writing too little and really having to stretch myself the last couple of days to hit 50,000. But generally with these, it's really easy to write more than you need because it's only 1,000 words. So I'm still ahead, a sentence or so, I guess. A sentence or two, I should say. But I have a lot of story to go through. Tightening up dialogue. I'm just taking a second pass. And I think I have a pretty solid ending. I know it's just sort of a sketch at the moment, the very last line, but I think with these short stories, it's really important to have great opening lines and great closing lines. I don't know that the ones I have are great, but I think they're pretty good. They're at least impactful, right? I think they leave you with an impression that once you finish the story, you keep thinking about it. And I think that's really the goal of any storyteller. Is if you're a filmmaker, you want that last shot to be something that's just etched into their minds. And writing is no different. I feel like sometimes writing can be there's just a music to words, and I think that with writing you can get even more powerful sometimes, because I think when you're filming something, you're relying not only on the director and the cinematographer and the actor. You're just it's everything. It's like so many people that have to like hit that note perfectly. Whereas with writing, you just have to get that line right. It's that one thing because you're relying upon the imagination of the reader to fill it in, and hopefully you create that music, and they hear that music, and it's not just in your head. because I really love it when books have great final lines. I feel like it's a little bit underrated. A lot of books I read generally, the final lines are just, it's a conclusion, but it doesn't really hit you, And so here I am going to the very end, um, trying to clean up this last bit when he died. I didn't want to draw it out or anything. I wanted it to be because he's still just very out of his head. Essentially, he's so pleased with what has happened, how he finally found her, and so I want to say, he saw her. He truly saw her for the first time. And I think that, when you've had a relationship with somebody for a long time and been through a lot and you lost them in his case, and then, when you finally find that person, it is like seeing them for the first time. You're kind of just hit with all those emotions, and really that's what I was trying to do. He's dying. His last thing that his vision was the last thing to dim, head floating into oblivion. Yeah, and Jack saw her like it was the first time. And I hit 101. This was a pretty good run, I think. I didn't go too far over. I hit my mark. So now I'm just trying to get rid of that one last word, and there I did it. Welcome to the end, dear viewer. The few of you that decide to watch the video this far. I know it's a long video, but I can only assume that it's my writer friends that watch the entire thing because they want to know my final thoughts after I've written it and what I learned and maybe what I did wrong. And I think at the core, this was an exercise in dialogue. And as I mentioned, the read through when I was talking about my thoughts about the story, I thought dialogue, or I think dialogue is really all about subtext. It's not what is said on the page, it's what is unsaid. And I know that sounds weird, but if you really pay attention to film or dialogue in books, that's what creates these great moments. That the subtext, right? You're talking about one thing, but then actually meaning something else. And there's a great story. I wish I could remember the name of it. I'll probably post it up right here or right here. It's a Hemingway story, and he is a master at his craft, and that's exactly what it is. It's two people talking about one thing and meaning something else. And I don't feel like I was super deep in that realm in this writing. I mean, I feel like I did say a lot of surface things, but there was just the back and forth, especially early on in the story, when everything he said she'd counter with something unexpected. And it was unexpected in that it was very normal for like a holographic companion to make, buying a drink or complimenting him on his looks. And so while I didn't set out for it to be an exercise that way, it was. I mean, I knew I wanted to do a dialogue because there was no action. I did not want to have the painting exist in a moment in the story that wasn't all encompassing, so to speak. So that's why I wanted to keep the camera locked there. I wanted to capture his moment of reminiscing or remembrance or whatever it is. At least that's what I took from his expression. And I wanted that to be the core piece. And that's, I think, what I try to do with all these is that image. You need to read the story or look at the image and then read the story and just say, that's it. I get it, right? The image needs to stand for the entire 1,000 words. That's the goal. Now, I don't think it was one of the best stories I've done, but I'm okay with it. It's not bad. It was a good exercise for me, and that's really what these are. These are to allow myself to experiment with certain pieces of writing craft without dedicating an entire novel to it. Because as much fun as it is to dive deep into that, like, it's really cool to just dip your toe in things. And I think that's what my escape is here. And I highly encourage you, if you haven't done it already, use images as writing prompts. They're much better than word writing prompts because you can pull so many different things out of an image, right? You can pull so many different starting points. The image could be the beginning of the story, it could be the middle of the story, it could be the end of the story. But anyway, I think that's it for me. I'm looking forward to playing Cyberpunk this week. I got it pre-ordered, and keep an eye out. I'm going to start streaming a little bit more. And I know some of you hate that. I've had subscribers gain and subscribers lost because they're probably looking at this channel going like, what the hell is this guy doing? He's like writing books and he's playing video games and he's talking about movies. And I know it's a very mixed bag kind of channel, but really what I wanted to do is this channel to be just about the stuff I like. Everything's story related though. Like I play story driven games. I talk about novels. I talk about movies. Those are all story related. And so I can only assume that the people who have remained subscribed can see that connection or have seen that connection. And thanks for sticking with me. I know I'm not as focused as a lot of other channels, and I know I'm not as prolific as a lot of other channels, but I'm having a great time. So I'm going to keep doing these, and I hope you keep watching. And as always, keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye. If you'd like to read this story in its non-video format, check the link in the description. I didn't add anything else. Promise. Thanks again.